Question orale, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It is a failure to increase the cost of the bureaucracy by 50% with poorer services. It is a failure to have 150,000 workers go out on strike, and the biggest general strike in 4 decades. But it is an especially incredible achievement of incompetence to do both of those things at the same time. Right. Only the Prime Minister could pull that off. Now, our veterans, our immigrants, our small businesses, our taxpayers will be without services. How will the Prime Minister fix the government he broke?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the members opposite in the Conservative Party, we deeply respect the work that unions do across the country to stand up for good middle-class jobs. That's why we've ensured that the work is done at the bargaining table. We know there's progress being made, but it's an important principle to respect the work of the bargaining table. That is what we are encouraging people to continue to do, because yes, Canadians deserve their services, and we need to continue to support the public service that delivers those services to Canadians.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
When the Conservatives were in power, there was no general strike, and government cost 1/3 less. So, Mr. Speaker, it's a failure to increase the cost of bureaucracy by 50%. It's a failure to have 150,000 people striking. It shows incredible incompetence on the Prime Minister's part. He managed to do both at the same time. How will the Prime Minister fix the damage that he has caused to our government and our taxpayers?
The
Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians continue to count on the services delivered by the federal government. That's why we encourage everyone to stay at the bargaining table, because that's the way that we will get the results we want. We'll always be there to ensure that Canadians get the services that they need, and we'll also be there, unlike the Conservatives, to defend the principles of unionism and the right to collective bargaining. And we will do that work around the collective bargaining table. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Albert confirmed yesterday that he was gifted $80,000 worth of free accommodations at the villa of a Trudeau Foundation donor. That's what anyone else would have had to pay to stay there over that 9-day vacation. Now, he has a big IOU to those Trudeau Foundation donors, who will obviously be expecting something in return for it. Everyday Canadians pay for their own accommodations when they go on vacation. Will he agree to pay back that $80,000 gift?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I went away with my family and my kids to stay with friends that we have known for decades in a place that I have stayed at many times over the past decades since I was 1 year old, Mr. Speaker. But of course, in all these situations, we work with the Ethics Commissioner to ensure that all the rules are followed, and that happened in this case.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, nobody is raising qualms with the Prime Minister having a vacation. I know it's his favorite thing to do. I had a vacation at the same time. It was a Sunwing package, and I did stay 5 hours waiting at the airport. But that being said, I paid for it myself. I paid for it myself. We're not asking for the Prime Minister to pay for the security. We're not even asking him to pay for his private jet. We're simply asking him to pay the same price any other family who stayed at that resort would pay, so that he doesn't owe anybody anything. Will he pay back that $80,000?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, these are family friends. My father was godfather to one of their children. Their father was godfather to one of my brothers. Mr. Speaker, these are family friends that we've had for many, many decades, close to 50 years. And over those 50 years, I have been to that vacation spot many, many times with my family, with my father when he was still alive. But of course, Mr. Speaker, we worked with the Ethics Commissioner to make sure all rules were followed, and we followed followed all the practices in regards to prime ministerial travel, including, unfortunately, having security along with us, which is a requirement for all prime ministers of any party.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And we all agree the Prime Minister should have security. We have no problem with him having friends, and my friends might buy me a cup of coffee or a beer, but not an $80,000 gifted vacation that obviously comes with an IOU. This came from wealthy Trudeau Foundation donors who live in Bermuda, a long way away for his friends. And now these people will have inordinate influence on him. He works for them rather than working for the Canadian people. Will he get rid of this IOU and clear his conscience by paying for his own vacation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I don't think Canadians are worried about the Leader of the Opposition's friends who buy him a cup of coffee. I think the Canadians are worried about his billionaire friends that he's using to attack local news for Canadians right across the country. His issues with the CBC has brought him to involve American tech giants to try and attack the local news, the local culture, the francophone news that Canadians rely on from coast to coast to coast. Yes, we have our disagreements in this place, but when he goes running to his billionaire tech giant friends to try and attack Canadian institutions, Canadians should be asking tough questions of this leader.
L'Honourable Député de Belleuil.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. It's now established, Mr. Speaker, that the Chinese regime is behind the $1 billion that the Chinese businessman wanted to give to the University of Montreal. It's also clear that the university was probably aware of this. This is Chinese communist money that the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation solicited for its own activities. $250,000 out of $1 million. Is it not also clear to the Prime Minister that he doesn't have the distance necessary to impose a decision here, and that we need a public independent commission of inquiry? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. As the Bloc has been doing for a long time, they're attacking the wrong Trudeau. It was the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation that made this decision. And for a decade, I have had no direct or indirect affiliation with that foundation or the decisions that it makes. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, how do you define the right Trudeau? You know, the Prime Minister said that he knew nothing about the Trudeau Foundation, but I have a hard time imagining, well, let's say I'm sure that he knew what was going on. But even if he didn't, he should at least try to be informed, otherwise he's not doing his job properly. So can he tell us how much the Green family gave to the Trudeau Foundation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, when I say that I had no direct or indirect affiliation with the Trudeau Foundation and have not for a decade, it's because it's true. So I was not aware of the donation from the Green family, and that shouldn't be surprising because they are long-standing friends who are interested in the same type of things that we're interested in, but I didn't know about it. I didn't know any details about it, and the opposition will have to accept that what I'm saying is true. I didn't have any contact with the Trudeau Foundation and haven't for a decade. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Democrats are extremely disappointed that the Liberal government didn't arrive at a negotiated agreement with the Public Service Alliance of Canada. These are the workers that delivered unprecedented help during the challenging times of the pandemic. They deserve our respect. They don't deserve groans from the Conservatives. They deserve respect. These workers worked hard, and now the government's got to step up. The government often talks a good game about a collective bargaining, but ends up doing very much the same as the Conservatives. So will the Prime Minister commit to not bringing in back-to-work legislation and instead commit to negotiating a fair deal for these workers?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, government negotiations are, as we speak, at the table with the unions, bargaining in good faith towards getting to the right solution that will continue to deliver the services that Canadians rely on and that they were able to rely on through the pandemic from our extraordinary public service, but also make sure that we're moving forward in responsible ways. This is something that we have always stood for. We will continue to support unions and collective bargaining. This is the first day day of labor disruptions, we continue to be very optimistic. We're going to be able to see this resolved where it needs to at the bargaining table.
Member for Burnaby South.
Le gouvernement libéral parle souvent.
The Liberal government often talks about workers' rights, but their actions are often the same as the Conservatives. Public service workers are some of the workers who worked the hardest during the pandemic. They deserve our respect. Will this Prime Minister commit to not tabling back-to-work legislation? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as my NDP colleagues know well, we are currently actively negotiating. Our negotiators are around the bargaining table. We're putting forward responsible proposals that respect the hard work of public service workers over the last few years, but that will also ensure that we will continue to provide services that Canadians need.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
We now know from intercepted phone calls that the Chinese consulate sought to influence this Prime Minister by making a $140,000 donation to the Trudeau Foundation, a donation that was arranged and signed off on by the Prime Minister's own brother. This was for the specific purpose of influencing the Prime Minister's decisions as Liberal leader and eventually Prime Minister. Does the Prime Minister really expect us to believe he has never discussed the Trudeau Foundation with his brother since that donation?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I have said, I have had no engagement, direct or indirect, with the Trudeau Foundation in close to 10 years. And that includes not knowing about what donations are taking, what decisions they're making, or what my brother is doing on the foundation. I have made that decision 10 years ago to not engage with the foundation, and that is what we have all been consistent with.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He has no direct or indirect involvement with the Trudeau Foundation? Really? Because the annual report for 21-22 lists him as an inactive member and says that he is only withdrawn from the affairs of the foundation for the duration of his involvement in federal politics, meaning he can go back to that big pile of cash when he leaves office, cash that was contributed to by the regime in Beijing. Why does the Prime Minister keep making statements of falsehood about his involvement with his family foundation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I believe the Leader of the Opposition needs to look in a dictionary for the definition of inactive. It goes exactly to what I have said. I have had no involvement, direct or indirect, with the Trudeau Foundation for 10 years. I am completely inactive in that sense because I am active delivering benefits for Canadians, delivering growth through the middle class, delivering dental benefits that member voted against, delivering a child benefit, delivering child care that have made a huge difference for Canadians. That's what I'm active doing, not any of that other stuff.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, I did look up the word inactive, and you know what it does not include? Getting the donors of the Trudeau Foundation to pay for your vacation. It does not include getting members of the Trudeau Foundation to be appointed as the election interference watchdog. It does not include appointing a rapporteur to look into that same interference who was an active member of the Trudeau Foundation, and it does not include having a brother who facilitated the donation from a foreign dictatorship. How does the Prime Minister reconcile his inactive involvement with all of those activities?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, viewers watching at home may be surprised to see the extent to which the Leader of the official opposition is choosing to focus on me. When they are worried about affordability, they are worried about growth, they are worried about health care, when we are moving forward with a budget that delivers a grocery rebate to Canadians, that delivers health care, that delivers dental care, that delivers a plan for great jobs for the middle class for the coming years, and that member and his entire party will be voting against that budget that helps Canadians tonight. Shame on them, Mr. Speaker. We should be helping Canadians here. That's not what he's doing.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What he's doing is helping himself to Trudeau Foundation donor money. Helping himself by using the influence that his office gives to indirectly generate donations to the Trudeau Foundation. And speaking of that, his brother was the one that orchestrated the donation from the Beijing dictatorship to the Trudeau Foundation. He personally attended the announcement of the donation, and it's his name that signed the agreement for the donation. So once again, has the Prime Minister discussed the Trudeau Foundation with his brother since that donation was received?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've already said no to that question. No is the answer. But at the same time, as he tries to focus on me and spinning all sorts of different conspiracy theories, we will continue to stay focused on Canadians, on delivering on our commitments in Budget 2023 with affordability, including the grocery rebate, including cracking down on hidden junk fees and predatory lending, introducing auto filing for taxes for low-income Canadians. We're there to support Canadians during this difficult time. The Leader of the Opposition is going to be voting against that tonight, voting against the support for Canadians that we are going to continue to deliver despite his attacks.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there's no attack. We're simply asking him to do what every other Canadian would normally do. The average Canadian pays for their own camping trip, pays for their own family vacation. He gets his vacations funded by Trudeau Foundation donors. We're not asking for him to pay for the security or even for the private jet. We're simply asking for him to pay back the $80,000 gift that he got from his wealthy friends in Bermuda, donors to the Trudeau Foundation. Will he get this IOU out of his pocket and pay the money back?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to focus on me, we will continue to focus on Canadians, including moving forward on strengthening health care. We are in the process of signing historic deals with all the provinces to deliver more family doctors, to deliver better mental health care, to deliver better supports for our frontline workers and a reduction of backlogs, and to deliver better data collection right across the country so we can make sure Canadians are getting the best possible health care from coast to coast to coast. On top of that, we're moving forward with a dental care plan that's going to deliver dental care for Canadians right across the country, and he voted against it.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister really expects us to believe that he has not discussed this donation that the dictatorship in Beijing directed to the Trudeau Foundation, even though it was his brother that signed off on the donation, orchestrated the transaction, and signed the agreement to bring the money home. If he really expects us to believe that, then a very simple question. Will he agree to have his brother come before a parliamentary committee to testify about foreign interference in our country? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I believe you can perhaps rule on this. There is a convention in Parliament that assumes and that accepts that members are telling the truth. So I don't know how many times I have to say no to his question that he is asking. I don't know why it's so hard for people in the Conservative Party of Canada to accept that no means no, but we will continue to answer these questions in full truthfulness, and we will continue, despite his mudslinging and his personal attacks, to focus on delivering things for Canada. Now, the member opposite and everyone in this House has an opportunity to accelerate the grocery rebate. Will they accept the unanimous consent motion that does that?
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said that we had the wrong Trudeau. Well, I'm going to ask him another question about this by throwing in another Trudeau, Alexandre Trudeau, who signed a very strange agreement with two big Chinese donors who apparently hid the transaction behind a business front. That's something that might interest the Minister of Revenue. Does the Prime Minister talk to his brother? And is his brother in direct or indirect contact with the Foundation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I've said many times, it's been 10 years since I've had no direct or indirect engagement with the Trudeau Foundation, and that includes the fact that I don't discuss the functioning of the foundation with my brother. I have a lot of responsibilities, including helping the middle class in Canada, protecting the French language and culture in Canada, and against conservative attacks. And at the same time, the Bloc is trying to find conspiracy theories, while I am working on delivering for Canadians every day, because that's what Quebecers and Canadians expect from us. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. The Prime Minister didn't know anything. He doesn't speak to his brother. Does he talk to his cabinet? In 2016, his cabinet asked questions to the Trudeau Foundation. Does he not talk to his cabinet? When services tell him month after month that there's Chinese interference, he doesn't listen to them. He doesn't listen to anyone. He doesn't talk to anyone. Is the Prime Minister getting back from a vacation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the Bloc Québécois might be referring to the fact that in 2016 there was a lot of coverage and a lot of questions about the Trudeau Foundation, and my cabinet did need to go get answers to the questions that the media was asking us, because we didn't know what was happening inside the Trudeau Foundation. Because the cabinet and I did not have any direct or indirect contact with the Trudeau Foundation, and I haven't in 10 years. The leader of the Bloc Québécois said that himself in his question.
Hill.
Speaker, everyone agrees that the Prime Minister is entitled to a vacation, and everyone agrees that the cost of security for any Prime Minister when he travels is a reality. But everyone also agrees that $9,000 over 9 nights at a super elite villa of a Trudeau Foundation donor raises some questions. That's $81,000. I'll ask the Prime Minister again, because he has an answer. Will he pay that money back?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I went with my family and my children to a place that I have been to probably dozens and dozens of times over the past many decades, because they are long-standing.
Just going to interrupt. I'm starting to hear some names being called back and forth again. I want to remind the honourable members not to call each other names, just to respect out of the chamber, if nothing else. The Right Honourable Prime Minister, you have 30 seconds.
Speaker, it is interesting to see the extent to which the Conservative Party doesn't want to talk about Budget 2023 and all the measures that we're putting forward to support Canadians, whether it's the grocery rebate, whether it's the work we're doing on supporting small businesses by reducing credit card fees, whether it's by moving forward on dental care supports that the Conservatives continue to oppose. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to focus on Canadians while they, for some reason, focus on me.
Hear, hear.
Well, member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, we're focused on the Prime Minister's vacation, and I know that there's a lot of Canadians who believe that he should take a permanent vacation, but this is like a vacation auction. You donate to the foundation, you get a holiday with the Prime Minister. It's pay to play. He didn't pay the $81,000 back for his luxury villa, because if he did, he would have said so. So what did those donors get for the gift that ordinary Canadians that he works for didn't?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
That family includes a godfather to one of my brothers, and my father was godfather to one of those children. We have been family friends for decades. We will continue to be family friends for decades more, Mr. Speaker. And as always, we work with the Ethics Commissioner to make sure that all the rules are followed. That's what Canadians know and understand. But Canadians are probably puzzled as to why the Conservative Party continues to stand against dental care, continues to stand against support for low-income Canadians, continues to stand against childcare that is saving Canadians hundreds of dollars a month at a time of need.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the Prime Minister doesn't live on the same planet as most Canadians. He's more afraid of the end of the world than he is of the end of the month. We also know that the friends that he goes on vacation with are very, very wealthy. But as Prime Minister, he has an ethical and moral responsibility to pay for his personal expenses when he's traveling. Can the Prime Minister confirm that he will pay for the accommodation that he had in Jamaica? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's extremely important that Canadians can trust in the work that we're doing here. That's why we have an ethics and conflict of interest commissioner who gives us guidelines about how we can continue to do our work with integrity and to maintain the trust of Canadians. In this case, when I went to vacation with friends, I worked with the ethics commissioner to ensure that all the rules were followed, and they were. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. His team briefed him before the trip. They said, be careful about the optics. Optics about what? Well, the optics of going on vacation with multimillionaire friends while Canadians are having a hard time making ends meet. Now, I can understand that he was invited, but look, the estate is called Jamaica's Prospect Estate. It's a place where people go and pay over $1,000 a day to stay there. This is a place that is made to be rented out. The problem is that from an ethical and moral point of view, the Prime Minister should be paying for his own expenses. Will he pay the $80,000? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I was a year old the first time that we went to stay with those friends. Over the decades, I continued to be friends with these people and to visit them. Sometimes I went to their place, sometimes they came to my place. We're true friends, Mr. Speaker, and I think that even the Conservatives should understand that concept of long-standing friendship. Certainly, Mr. Speaker, as is always the case, we worked very closely with the Ethics Commissioner to ensure that all of the rules were followed, and they were. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
Monsieur le Président, je me rappelle du moment où j'ai été élu en 2011.
Mr. Speaker, I remember the time I was elected in 2011. The Conservatives filed back-to-work legislation against the Postal Office. It's crazy. 12 years later, a Liberal government is about to act like the Conservatives did. For the NDP, it's clear. We will always stand with workers. Will the Prime Minister show himself to be a Conservative and impose back-to-work legislation, or will he work to negotiate a good agreement for all of those who were there during the pandemic? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Despite the trouble that I had actually hearing the member's question, I can say that we are working in good faith and we are around the bargaining table because for years we have shown that we respect the work of unions, the essential work that they do to defend the middle class and good jobs, including public service jobs. And we will continue to work in good faith around the bargaining table to ensure that services can be provided to Canadians.
For London.
Workers who serve the people of London are on strike today demanding a fair deal from this government. These workers deserve respect. People in London are looking carefully at what the government does next. Will they do what they usually do and show their Conservative colours, or will they listen to workers' legitimate demands and commit to not introducing back-to-work legislation?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our Conservative colours. The member opposite knows full well that the very first thing we did when we got elected was eliminate the Conservative anti-union legislation 525 and 377. The attacks the Conservatives laid on Labour were legendary, and that's why we've worked in partnership with organised unions, organised Labour across this country to deliver real services to Canadians. And that's why we continue to sit at the bargaining table in good faith to work with them to continue to deliver the quality of services that Canadians have always gotten from the public service and deserve to continue to get.
Hear, hear.
Well, member for Kings Hants.
Mr. Speaker, my constituents in Kings Hants rely on getting quality news to inform them on what's happening at home and indeed across Canada. The recent attacks by the Conservative opposition leader on Canada's media and journalists is resembling the same type of playbook of the extreme right-wing politics in the United States. By attacking Canada's public broadcaster, they are undermining an important way Canadians stay informed, particularly in Francophone communities, rural Canada. Can the Prime Minister...
I'm going to have to interrupt. I'm having a hard time hearing the question. Maybe take the question not from the top, but about halfway, please.
But you know what, Mr. Speaker, the fact that I'm getting drowned down is actually just a real illustration of where the Conservative Party of Canada is at right now. Let me ask this, Mr. Speaker. Can the Prime Minister comment on this government's approach to protecting local media and vibrant news outlets in this country in opposition to what that party is standing for right now?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for Kings Hants for his important question and his extraordinary hard work. I know that he and MPs from coast to coast to coast have heard from constituents who understand the vital role that local news plays in their communities. That's why it's so disappointing to see the Conservative leader copy-paste right-wing talking points from the States in his effort to shut down these local news outlets. On this side of the House, we will always stand up for the important services that rural, Francophone, and indeed families across the country rely on.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. The Trudeau Foundation, named for the father of the current Prime Minister, and which, according to its annual report, where 2 seats are reserved for members of the family, the Prime Minister and his brother, Alexandre Trudeau, that shows that the foundation is a family one, and the Prime Minister spent a great deal of taxpayers' money on donors to the foundation. And he has said a number of things about how he has spent a lot of time with these friends who are donors to the foundation. How many times? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, we see the Conservatives using or putting forth conspiracy theories. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that we will always respect the Ethics Commissioner's recommendations about all of my personal travel. And, Mr. Speaker, at the same time, I can also say that for 10 years I have not been directly or indirectly engaged with the Trudeau Foundation. The Honourable Member. It's so difficult, Mr. Speaker, to get answers from the PM about simple questions. We asked him how much he personally paid for his travel to Jamaica recently, but the Prime Minister doesn't want to answer. I also asked a simple question. After hearing what he himself said today, he said himself that he many times, dozens of times, went to Jamaica to stay on this private property. So I'm just asking for a simple answer. How many times did he go stay in Jamaica since he's been an MP in this House? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, that was the first time since I was Prime Minister that I went to visit those friends. And by memory, I think I only went one time when I was an MP here before becoming PM. But, Mr. Speaker, as is always the case, we work with the Ethics Commissioner to ensure that all rules are followed, even when we are just visiting friends.
The Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals, and 1.5 million Canadians are using the food bank every month. Their rent or mortgage payments have doubled since this Prime Minister took office, and many of them don't know how they'll be able to pay the bills at the end of each month. So while Canadians are struggling with the cost of living, this Prime Minister jets off on a Jamaican vacation for $81,000 at a private villa, courtesy of a big-time Trudeau Foundation donor. How much of that gift did the Prime Minister pay back out of his own pocket?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the Conservative Party really cared about Canadians and affordability instead of on personal attacks on me, they would move forward on actually supporting the budget we're putting forward tonight, that is delivering affordability supports, mental, dental, and health care supports to Canadians, as well as building great jobs in the growing green economy right across the country. Indeed, they have an even sooner opportunity to do that. Will they let pass the unanimous consent motion that will accelerate delivery of the grocery rebate to 11 million Canadians across the country. Please, I hope they support that motion now.
Honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Mr. Speaker, since 2015, this Prime Minister has spent $21 billion more on the public service and $22 billion on outside consultants. And yet he wasn't capable of negotiating an agreement with the public service. And Mr. Speaker, it's Canadians who are suffering, Canadians who are not receiving their passports, Canadians' loved ones whose immigration processes will be elongated, and it's Canadians who will not receive their tax refunds. Mr. Speaker, will this Prime Minister take responsibility and apologize not only to the public service, but to Canadians for failing to reach a negotiation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We know all too well what the Conservative playbook would be on this. Back to work legislation even before the picket lines were brought up. That's what they've done before. That's their go-to on this. On this side of the House, we actually respect and work with unions as partners. We respect the right to collective bargaining. We have been at the table working constructively. They continue to be at the table right now in constructive conversations, and we will continue to be there to make sure that Canadians get the services they need and public servants continue to get the respect they deserve but that they don't get from Conservatives.
Le député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Trudeau Foundation, which bears the name of the PM's father, Pierre Trudeau, and on the board of which sits Alexandre Trudeau, the PM's brother, and we know that it received donations for a statue of his father, Pierre Trudeau. He has admitted that his cabinet is in contact with the foundation. Doesn't that mean that he himself has had fairly direct contact with the foundation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in 2016, there were a number of questions going around, questions that I was getting in this House, for example, about the Trudeau Foundation. And that's why my cabinet asked some questions in order to know what was happening with the foundation. Because as I said, for 10 years I haven't had direct or indirect contact with the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation. I just don't understand what part of this answer the leader of the Bloc Québécois is refusing to accept. But it's the truth. And it's what I've been saying for some time. The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, we see this Prime Minister not doing his work as he's getting roasted for this matter, just like the barbecue he was talking about earlier. He should be paying attention to his work. So let me put an end to this water torture. Why not allow Parliament to choose someone to direct a public and independent inquiry that he won't have anything to do with, so that he can finally get back to his actual work? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, if the leader of the Bloc Québécois wants this government to get back to its work, well, he just has to vote in favour of our budget tonight, because we are here to deliver measures to help Canadians with the cost of living. We are here to help SMEs with credit card charges. We are here to help Canadians by investing in the healthcare system with dental care for Canadians. We will be there to create good middle-class jobs with a green pivot for the years to come, which will give us good jobs and growth throughout the country. The leader of the Bloc Québécois has a simple choice. Will he support our budget or not?
Le chef de l'opposition.
And yet, all that matters is the results. And the result is that after 8 years of this Prime Minister, 1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals, and 1.5 million eating at food banks every single month. Some are eating out of garbage bins because of his inflationary policies. His solution that we're voting against is to bring in a 41 cent a litre carbon tax that will cost $1,500 per household in net expenses after rebates on higher home bills, higher grocery bills, and higher gas bills. Will he axe his tax if he really wants to help?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the leader opposite wants to talk about what we've done since 2015. Let's talk about that. We've lifted over 435,000 children out of poverty through the Canada Child Benefit, which his party campaigned against. We created over 50,000 childcare spaces to date and cut childcare fees in half across the country, including 6 provinces and territories that are $10 a day that he voted against. We've helped over 230,000 kids access dental care so far, which his party voted against. Mr. Speaker, every step of the way, we've been there for Canadians. He's been there for himself.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This from the guy who just stuffed his face with an $80,000 free vacation. Sometimes you make it easy for me, Justin. Mr. Speaker, if only it was a laughing matter that 1 in 5 Canadians are eating at food banks, some of them going to the CEO of those food banks asking for help with medical assistance and dying. And his solution is to raise taxes on farmers and truckers who bring food to our grocery stores, which will inevitably lead to more hunger and famine. If he has any common sense at all, will he finally axe his carbon tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, everyone in Canada knows that you cannot have a plan for growing the economy if you do not have a plan to fight climate change. Everybody except the Conservative Party of Canada, Mr. Speaker. While we have moved forward by putting a broad price on pollution and bringing down our emissions over the past number of years, we have also put more money back in the pockets of Canadians. And Canadians know that as we fight climate change and support them through this challenging time, they will be able to have better jobs for themselves and their kids for the coming decades.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And yet, the parliamentary budget officer that he appointed has calculated that the cost of the carbon tax to the average family is $1,500 more than these phony rebates that they get back. This is not just a 41-cent a litre tax on gas he wants to impose, but then it'll raise the cost for farmers and truckers to bring food. So it is a food tax. Exactly. Is his solution to the fact that 1.5 million Canadians are starving and going to food banks to raise taxes on food?
Exactly. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Our solution is to continue to invest in affordability for Canadians, including with the grocery rebate that we really hope the Conservatives will vote to accelerate, even though they will probably vote against it tonight in the budget vote. In regards to the price on pollution, the member knows that constituents in his riding, the average family of 4, will be receiving over $1,000 in carbon price returns this year, because that offsets the cost of the price on pollution that they are facing. It is both a plan to fight climate change and grow the economy while supporting Canadians, and we will continue with it.
L'honorable député de Châteauguay.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, the National Shipbuilding Strategy is a program that will enable us to create and maintain good jobs throughout the country. Previously, Seaspan and Irving shipyards were involved in the strategy, and now there will be a third one. A third official shipyard, the Davie shipyard at Lévis. Can the Prime Minister tell us more about this important announcement and its effects on the economy? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Châteauguay-Lacolle for the question and her hard work. We recently announced that Davie Shipyard at Lévis will be the third strategic partner under the National Shipbuilding Strategy. This represents $21 billion in revenue and 4,500 well-paid jobs in the region of Quebec City. Davy is currently working on the design and construction of 6 icebreakers and 1 of 2 polar icebreakers for the ship for the Coast Guard. We will be there for Quebec in a way that the Conservative Party has never been.
Position.
So just pay this 41 cent a liter tax, and the Prime Minister will send you something called a carbon price return. That's his latest term for it. It's almost like you get one of those emails asking for you to give the password to your bank account so they can deposit a carbon price return into Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that this tax is a scam. It hasn't reached any of the climate change targets, and yet is going to be a net cost to every family of $1,500. Canadians can't afford to eat, heat, or house themselves. Will he axe his tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that the member opposite choose to spend a little time in his riding of Carleton, because if he did, he would hear from family members and individuals in his riding who just last Friday received the Climate Action Incentive check to families right across his riding, right across Ontario, in one of payments every 3 months that will total over $1,000 for Ontario families of 4 to help them offset the price of pollution that we put and continue to build good jobs and a better future for all Canadians. That's what we're doing. People know we have to fight climate change and support families.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Oh, I have spent time in my riding, and what they're talking about is that they can't afford to put gas in their car because the Prime Minister's carbon tax is already 14 cents a litre, rising to 41 cents a litre. And according to a report, page 3 of the parliamentary budget officer whom he appointed, the net cost to the average Ontario family, above and beyond any rebate checks they will get, is $1,820 a year. Mr. Speaker, this is not an environmental plan, it is a tax scam. Will he axe the tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer's report concurs with our analysis that points out that 8 out of 10 families across the country in regions where the federal backstop is brought in do better with the climate action rebate than the carbon price costs them. This is something that is well established. What is less clear, Mr. Speaker, is how the Conservative Party of Canada plans to grow the economy and create good jobs for the future when they refuse to accept that climate change is real and also provides an opportunity to innovate and grow the economy.
The Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, not only does page 3 of the Parliamentary Budget Officer report show that when you add the fiscal and economic cost, the net cost above and beyond the rebates is $1,820 per Ontario family, with the majority, the vast majority, paying more than they get back. And apparently the Environment Minister didn't get the memo. He let the cat out of the bag and admitted that Canadians would pay more in taxes than they got back in any benefits, proving that everything this Prime Minister has said on this tax has been false. Why won't he admit what his Environment Minister has already said and say this is a scam?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I think it would do some good for the Leader of the Opposition to speak to some of his caucus members, whether they be from the Lower Mainland and the Fraser Valley in BC, or whether it be across the prairies, places where they're dealing with flooding or more extreme wildfires, to think that there is no cost associated with climate change.
It's just getting loud again. I just want to make sure that the honourable member who asked the question gets to hear the answer. We don't want shouting or trying to interrupt anyone. I'm going to ask everyone to just take a deep breath. Right Honourable Prime Minister, maybe start from the top so the honourable member can hear the answer.
Over the past years, we have seen right across the country, including in many Conservative-held ridings that should be telling this to their leader, that the cost of inaction on fighting climate change is getting alarmingly high. Whether it's floods or wildfires or droughts, we are seeing impacts of climate change that are going to get worse and worse. That is why it is necessary to have a plan to fight climate change and grow the economy in sustainable ways that'll give great jobs for Canadians for the coming decades. Well, that's exactly what we've done with our approach on fighting climate change and in our latest budget.
L'honorable député, the honourable member for Pierrefonds-Dollard.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, last week, Environment and Climate Change Canada published the National Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory. This annual exercise sums up the state of fighting climate change in Canada. There are a number of pieces of good news in the report. Can the Prime Minister tell this House about Canada's record on GHG emissions reductions? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Pierrefonds-Dollard for his question. A very relevant one, in fact, especially given the questions we've been getting from the Conservatives. We are pleased to announce that Canada's emissions are going down compared to previous levels, and we are also growing our economy at the same time. And this is not something that happened by chance. We have brought in historic policies. I'm sorry, it's getting ridiculous. I'm trying to hear the Prime Minister's answer. It's almost impossible. I'm going to ask everyone to calm down. And I will ask the Prime Minister to start about halfway through his question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are pleased to announce that Canada's emissions are going down compared to 2019 and 2005 levels. And we are continuing to also help our economy grow. And since 2015, we have taken historic action, notably by putting a price on pollution. Conservatives are saying we must choose between air quality and the strength of the economy. But we are meeting both of those goals, and we will also be meeting our 2030 climate goals.
Member for Edmonton Griesbach.
Look, we've heard a lot of non-answers today, Mr. Speaker. Workers deserve decent wages and good working conditions. The Liberal government claims they support workers, but at the last moment, they act like Conservatives and don't have the workers' backs when they take a stand. For the final and last time today, Mr. Speaker, will the government commit to protecting workers' rights and not force workers back to work, yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are engaged in full respect, in debate, in discussions and negotiations at the bargaining table, which is where that needs to happen. Our negotiators and the unions are hard at work finding a way to ensure that we continue to support and respect the extraordinary public servants who've worked so hard, including over these past difficult years of pandemic, to deliver services for Canadians at the same time as we move forward in a way that is responsible for Canadian taxpayers. This is the work we will do in good faith and positively, like we have always engaged with unions across the country.
Honourable Member for Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, most Canadians know that the federal carbon tax is a farce. It siphons 14.3 cents a litre from the pockets of consumers. It increases the cost of living. It contributes to inflation, and it causes even higher food prices. Sadly, the carbon tax does little to fight climate change. Equally disturbing, Mr. Speaker, there is tax cascade.
Interrupt there and ask the honourable member to start again. I just couldn't hear the question.
Mr. Speaker, most Canadians know that the federal carbon tax is a farce. It siphons 14.3 cents a litre from the pockets of consumers. It increases the cost of living. It contributes to inflation, and it causes even higher food prices. Sadly, the carbon tax does little to fight climate change. Equally disturbing, Mr. Speaker, there is tax cascading, where the government levies the GST on all the other gasoline taxes. They're taxing taxes. If the Prime Minister wants to provide a meaningful, sustained rebate to financially struggling Canadians, why doesn't he lower his carbon tax, cash cow, and axe a tax on gasoline taxes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I can only think of the poor residents of Spadina, Fort York, who elected a member who would promise to fight for the environment, fight.
Okay. Order. Please continue.
Mr. Speaker, I can only feel bad for the citizens of Spadina, Fort York, who elected someone they thought was going to stand up for them, deliver them supports while putting a price on pollution and returning more money to the pockets of hardworking Ontarians. And now he's just spewing Conservative talking points. It's a real shame to see that, Mr. Speaker, but on this side of the House, we will continue to stand and fight for Canadians and for the fight against climate change.
Yes, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for question period today. We have a point of order for the Minister of Tourism.